Let's get the show going. Huh? Let's get the show going, I said. Huh? What am I hearing? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is the Tim Weisselbaum Show, episode 104. My name is Tim Weisselbaum. I'm an outlier. That's French for outlier. Outlier. I'm an outlier. Sorry, I didn't want to say the word because I'm an outlier. That means that I live outside of where other people lie. Most people lie within a certain bell of the curve. A curve. Let me explain. So, have you heard of a bell curve? Okay, this will not be that kind of episode. Okay. Welcome to the Tim Weisselbaum Show, episode 104. This is that episode. I already said which one it was. My name is Tim Weisselbaum. You know what? Let's just continue on from where we started before. I'm going to leave both of the intros in. I'm not going to edit it out. Okay, so back to what I was talking about. I'm an outlier. What does that mean? So picture a bell curve. I am outside where the curve goes up. I'm not in the curve. I'm an outlier. That means I'm on the flat part. Most people are having fun up in the top blob of the curve, the crest, the peak, whatever you call it, the top of the amplitude. They're just having a gay old time, dancing away, being normal. Like, way, everybody's exactly in the same place as me in life, so that means easy. It makes things easier because you don't have to think as much about how well, if everybody else is the same as me, what's to think about? I'm killing it now. So outliers, if you're on the opposite, if you're on either side of the spectrum for outliers, if you're really dumb or if you're really super smart, you have you're both relatable to each other. Like, I relate to people that are not average. I relate to people that are very low level who can't even get off their sofa bed. Some people sleep on those still. Those things still exist. There's still such a thing as pull-out couches. You don't hear about them as much. They've kind of been phased out. But pull-out couches still exist, and a lot of people can't even get out of there. So low level, what do I mean? Low level, I'm low level. I'm not saying I'm on the high end. I'm low level. See, that's the thing. People don't know which side you're talking about. Are you on the high end of the spectrum of the bell curve if you're talking about outlierism? I'm saying you have to be both. Like, smart people, the smartest of the all, they're also kind of not retarded, but they do retarded. They could be crazy, and so if you're really smart, you probably have something wrong with you that puts you at the low end of the spectrum as well. So there's a duality to outlierism. The dumbest people also, they creep up on the other side too. Have you noticed that a lot of special needs people also show up on the very high level part of the spectrum just because because you have to go somewhere. You can't go. It's just a phenomenon that has to do with like geometry and not statistics. It's like a cylinder. The water has to stay at level. So if you swish it around enough, some will just go on the other side. Not a good metaphor for what I'm describing. It's like, okay, like picture a superfluid. It's not bound by viscosity, so it'll just creep right out of the glass. So anyway, you can't contain people on either side of the spectrum if they're outliers. If they're just average, yeah, they'll just stay right there. Boring. They won't oscillate. See, even that word, even to say that word, you kind of have to be an outlier. Average people don't even use the word oscillate. So, so I already proved that I'm an outlier. So I don't even feel like an imposter anymore. That's gone. Imposter syndrome out the window. Buckle up into being a proud, confident outlier. I'm an outlier. Outlier. Now, the reason I'm using that word is because somebody sent an email. I got a random email from somebody that just sends emails to anybody with a podcast. And they said, hey, would you like to be on a panel of other outliers in their field so you could talk about how you're good at your job or in your industry or some generic thing like that has nothing to do with reality. I'm not actually in an industry. Last time I checked, this is not an industry. Standing in a bedroom that nobody lives in, like, this is a bedroom. You're supposed to just have a kid, like a little kid playing with Tinker Toys in this room. That's what it's for. That's what it's designed for. It's not a master bedroom. This place is only big enough for somebody in their 30s at the oldest. That's a kid. Like one of those man boys, those man childs who live with roommates up until their 40s. That's what this room was designed for. It's not designed for a podcast. Okay. That's the fun about life. If you are an outlier, you could just do whatever you want. You could design things. You could repurpose things. You'd be okay, I'm going to buy this house. Most people just use houses just to live in and have a family. No, I'm an outlier. This house is just for me to roam around and paint walls, random colors, because is somebody going to stop me? Do I have somebody? Hey, what are you doing? Why are you painting your bathroom walls random colors? Well, I'm starting in the bathroom because that's where I'm practicing, because not very many people go in my private bathroom. So that's where I'm starting the painting. I'm just painting the entire house, the inside. I don't care. The outside, it doesn't need to be. It's just a gray house, gray panels. I'm not going to paint the outside because it would look ugly. It would look weird. The inside, though, is going to be completely batshit, like an insane asylum. There's going to be all these zigzag lines. You're going to get dizzy anytime you have to walk from any room if you want to go to the kitchen to get a glass of water. Sorry, you're going to have to be walking past all these schizophrenic patterns. So as an outlier, that's what you do. You become obsessive about angles and geometry and patterns. You go, okay, so how many times, what kind of pattern can I draw around the rim of this door? I want to draw a pattern to embellish the frame of the door. You could do that with anything. Like these windows, there's no windowsill. It's a very boring, devoid of meaning window. It's just a hole in the drywall. No windowsill. Like the windowsill is just also made of drywall. So it's not pretty. It's just a hole where light comes in. So you got to paint around the window. The window treatments doesn't do anything. Doesn't add up. It's just a shade. So I'm painting around the window frame to make it more like a home. Even beyond that, your home should be not just a place where you sleep, like a tech bro. Now, a home that you actually want to live in and not just not just drink yourself to death while starting a startup in San Francisco with a mattress on the floor. No, I'm talking about like a real home. You want to decorate it to be like a temple. You want to make it so, I like that decoration. Any room you're in, even the bathroom, should have something in front of you to look at. Like a TV just in front of the toilet in your bathroom. Why not? If you got the money. So That's what I'm doing. I'm painting the house. And then I just wake up. Anytime I'm in the room that's painted, it feels more alive and more cozy and smaller. It makes the room feel less vacuous when there's a design that ties it all together, gives it a nice purpose to it. So don't be afraid if you own your own home. I don't know if you're in this position. If you own your own home where you also have total freedom to paint it without anybody telling you not to, just do it. You could always repaint it. Okay, so I'm a painter and I'm an outlier, and we don't gotta keep talking about that because I'm already boring myself to death. You know, like what if I just died of boredom? No, you can't really die of boredom. You can. I think a certain level of boredom, your brain... Nah, I don't think it's possible to die of boredom. That's just meditation. Your brain would love that. Your brain would just go, oh, thank you. I could stop thinking for a second. Your brain actually likes being bored. You don't. But your brain eventually gets over it. It's just your brain wants more dopamine. But really, you want dopamine. Your brain doesn't really care. Your brain is just like, okay... like, does your brain actually order up more dopamine? It's like, okay, come on. I need more dopamine. I think it does send orders to the kitchen, the basal ganglia, or the place where dopamine is manufactured. It sends literal orders to it, like the prefrontal cortex. It's like, okay, I'm throbbing. I need to not die here. Can I get some dopamine, please? And it has ways of sending signals to the part of the body that produces those chemicals to send back and be like, okay, thank you. Now we're not going to get hit by this bus. The PFC needs the dopamine to actually drive your body. Also to learn. Anything you learn, even if it's just to... Okay, that means go. To learn, like, okay, a permanent thing, I don't know how that works. But even to make a simple decision, you have to take an input, process it, and do something with it. Output that input into some other information, which is probably an action or a thought or something you say. That's it. What else can you do as a person? So that's what learning kind of comes down to, is an input goes in, something gets rattled around in your brain to like formulate a response, and then you send out that response. That's what existence is, not just learning. Why do I bring up learning? Well, there's learning and then there's teaching. You need both. You can't just have somebody teaching without anybody there to learn, right? So what the hell is that? So anytime we're alive, this is where it gets psychedelic. This is why I'm an outlier, is because I actually know things that aren't even talked about in pseudoscience yet. This is beyond pseudoscience. You have to go to like a website you have to go to the 90s to get this information. You have to use a Netscape Navigator browser to access this information. That's how old it is and how fringe it is. It's not old. I mean, it's old. I mean, okay, it's old because it's been around. If it's true, it's always been true. It's not like it's just become true. Okay, so this is what I am telling you about, because I'm an outlier, and you kind of have to trust me that I... Okay, so there's always this thing called a teacher-learner relationship going on at any given point in any existing system. That's a little vague. We could just start by talking about intelligent systems. What does intelligent mean? Anything capable of processing patterns consistently is a system that's capable of intelligence. Pattern processing is intelligence, in essence. It's a very vague description, so it's true. Anything that's intelligent can fall under that description. Processing patterns. Okay. Like, think of the most intelligent thing in the world. All you're doing is taking something and turning it into something else. You're processing something into a configuration, which is another word for pattern. Like, even if you write a book, if you write a novel and it's the best-selling, best-rated novel of all time, you could call that novel a pattern. Sorry to use that to simplify matters of life, but you gotta abstract. So that's what we're doing, is all we're doing in life is processing patterns. And to do that, you have to be able to process patterns. There has to be patterns to process. And what does that look like? Okay, and what else do you need? Okay, so to learn anything, to know anything, you need to be taught. Also, you need to have the ability to learn. So that's the teacher and the learner part. You're the learner, and somebody has to teach it to you, whatever that thing might be. It could just be looking out the window and seeing that the sun is up. You were taught by photons coming into your eyeballs. Those were the teachers. They taught you the observer, that the sun is up, that it's daytime, so you learnt. You were taught. Okay, where am I going with this? Well, that's the thing, is you could expand that process to literally not only just any individual thing that happens in time, like, oh, I learned this, I got this knowledge. It also applies to every ongoing process in the world. Right now, I'm in a learner-teacher relationship with this microphone. This microphone and the camera lens is picking up photons that bounce off me from the light. So it's the learner. I'm the teacher. My skin and flesh, the electrons in my body are reflecting the light photons back to the camera lens. And the microphone, same thing. The microphone is picking up the waves, the audio waves, not the sound waves, acoustic sound waves. It's the learner. But then it's also the teacher, because it's writing those sound waves to another format. It's translating those sound waves to another language, you could say, to electrical impulse, to a current. I'm not an electrician. I don't know anything about electronics, about electrical stuff. But I know that in essence that it's converting shit to other shit. That's all we're doing, is translating languages to other languages actively every second, every microsecond of the day. Even when you're just sitting there, you're taking in something, right? You're taking in sensory input, translating it to some form of meaning, and then outputting that meaning to some other activity. Who knows? Like, even just as a thought, it's a feedback loop that keeps going and going. The same input is fed back. The output is fed back as the input. That's what a feedback loop is, like a speaker system. If you put a microphone up to a speaker, it's going to feed back if it's connected to that speaker. If it's so feedback loops are not just an audio phenomenon that audio engineers are concerned about. It's why we're all allowed to exist at all. It's why we're allowed to have thoughts, is because there's a cyclical learner-teacher relationship where the learner and the teacher is always coupled. Without that relationship of two entities, And then what happens in the middle, that's where consciousness happens. That's where meaning happens. It happens in between, kind of, right? Because you kind of need both. Even after something was created, you still need the teacher-learner relationship to observe what that thing is that you created. Now you're taking in information about that thing that was already created and going, what does that mean? So it's a feedback loop, and then it iterates. We're just iterating over time, through time, iterating through time. Iterating is just a fancy word for one step at a time, for just tick-tock, tickety-tick-tock. It's another word for movement. It's just a fancy way of saying the smallest amount of movement, It's just saying, okay, we moved a little bit. That's what that means. Oscillation is also a synonym for pretty much the same thing. We're oscillating back and forth between this teacher-learner relationship. We're always going, okay, what's over there? What's over there? What's up? Like a pendulum. And we go back and forth from being the teacher and the learner, maybe. I don't know. I haven't figured that out. But it is like a pendulum. There's like, okay, what about this? What about this? Tick-tock. Pendulums are the things that swing back and forth. You could also say they oscillate. They could do full loops, and then they make up a circle. And then if you look at just the height of the circle, just the height, we're talking about the unit circle, and we're talking about SOHCAHTOA, the triangles that make up the unit circle. If you track the height of those, they make a sine wave. Sine waves are everywhere, but where do they come from? They come from something just oscillating pretty much in a simple way, in a very simple way, back and forth, or in a circle. Those both create sine waves. Okay. And in physics, there's a lot of freaking waves. They say that in physics, actually, everything that exists is a wave. Matter's a wave. Right now, when I'm doing this, you can't see it, but I'm actually, I'm flopping back. You can't see it, but the atoms are actually moving. They're actually like not staying perfectly together. They're a wave. They jiggle. They come apart. They stretch. They distort. They're not particles. They're waves. Particles are just frozen waves. That's what we just call it when it picks a place to stop moving for a second. Oh, it's a particle. No, that's where it's looking for a second. It just stopped for a second. Okay, then it keeps going again. Waves don't actually really stop until they get converted into another wave. They give energy to some other wave. They don't really stop. There's not really anything that just sits there. Matter isn't matter. It's energy configured to have mass through the Higgs field. The Higgs field is where mass comes from. There's an electron field. There's a field for everything. And there's points in those fields where there's higher energy, they say. Energy, what is energy? We don't know. It's momentum. It's angular momentum. It's heat. It's potential energy, kinetic energy. But what is it, though? Well, it's a form of, if you talk about movement, that's kinetic energy. What is movement? Well, we can't talk about movement without talking about time. Without time, there ain't no movement. We live in a 4D Minkowski space that's just 3D, 3 dimensions, but with time added in. If you have time added in, that means you can look anywhere you want in those 3 dimensions, which gives us a camera to move around. But the drawback is you're spending time. You can't just rotate through space-time without exerting some other resource called time. And causality is exactly the same thing as this. What's the difference between causality and time? Nothing. we wouldn't know that time existed if there wasn't causality to prove it. Because causality is all we're measuring when we measure time. Time allows for causality, which allows for logic, which allows for stability, which allows for stories to be told, which allows for stable configurations of meaning. Without time, we're just a soup of quarks just blobbing up against each other with no memory of when we did this. There's no meaning without time because we can't track when something happened. So we can't also we can't track where something happened because one cannot happen without the other. And we don't even know if that's true per se. We don't even know where this came from. We don't know where space-time came from. We know it's not real. The best geniuses on the planet, also other outliers, say that, yeah, it's probably not real. It's an illusion. Most things are illusions. Did I finish? Okay, so the learner-teacher relationship is always happening. It's that intrinsic, it's that unperfect, it's something that doesn't resolve. You can never fully learn. So it's always going to be there because it allows for consciousness. Consciousness is a loop. It's a feedback loop. Think about it. You ever get anxious? That's proof right there that just think about it. Okay, I'm getting anxious. What's happening? Oh, it's getting worse. I feel it in my stomach. It gets worse because it's compounding itself. The output becomes the input. You can't just magically just go, okay, I'm anxious, but let's just turn it off. Just throw away that input. Yeah, you could channel it away, but it's like a balancing act. If you let it go where it wants to go, it could turn into a panic attack, and then who knows, you might black out. Who the hell knows? Feedback loops need to be taken seriously. I mean, that's what a bad, like your mood, your personality, it's all based on what was fed into it in previous settings in the past. Causality. So whatever you got, that's what you're going to have so you could control it. You could be like, okay, this is a negative feedback loop. I know it's possible to just change it. If you just start getting the positive inputs, that too will compound. That's why success breeds success. It's because, yeah, they are already successful. And since that's being fed back into the loop, that's a good thing, right? So it's probably going to compound. That's why poor people, they can stay poor, or they get worse off. Not just poor people. I'm not really talking about poor people. I'm talking about unlucky people, so-called unlucky people, people that just think of themselves as unlucky. That language right there sets them up for failure because it's a prescription and language is all we have. If there's nothing else telling you how to live, you're going to go by whatever's in your head. So if you think you're a loser and you keep telling yourself, I'm a loser, you're going to believe it. Because we write things into existence. We can't, like, things don't just happen spontaneously. We write them out, and then sometimes they happen. But first, you got to at least write it out in your head or somewhere on a substrate. You got to be like, okay, I want to be successful. You got to have that written down in your head, like a vision board. Those things are semi-realistic. You have to dream. You have to, I mean, yeah. How do we get anything done? Let's say you want to cross the street without getting hit by a car. You imagine yourself getting to the other side without any cars going by, and then you make sure that your fantasy is realistic and you follow your dreams. You go, okay, I could see myself on the other side of that busy street. I'm just going to follow my dreams. So that's how we do anything. You kind of need at least a vague goal. Or maybe you're just doing something because it feels good. Okay. That's still somebody giving you information. You're getting information, you're getting a message, and you're going with it. It's not a goal. But who cares? Some people don't even have goals. They just follow what gives them pleasure and dopamine, and that's it. They just do what they like doing. And they naturally end up an outlier. That's what happened to me. I was just doing, and this is advice for people that want to be outliers, that are, you need, yeah. If you're in your 30s, it's too late. If you're in your 20s, it's probably not too late. But if you're in your 30s and you don't already know what I'm saying here, I don't know. Maybe it's possible to become an outlier in your 40s, not realizing it, that you have this ability. Because there's a lot of people that are outliers that don't know it, and they just go with the program despite their excruciating pain. They just white knuckle through the systems like, fuck this. Because they're hard work, because they can't just do what I did and go full throttle into their outlierism. But that's how it happens. If you want to be Jimi Hendrix, I am not Jimi Hendrix, but I am the Jimi Hendrix of I can't think of what I'm the Jimi Hendrix of quite yet. Okay, that guy was really good. There's nothing that I'm as good at that he was as good at guitar. There's nothing I come even close. Like all my collective abilities, it's not that impressive because they're all spread out. I'm a polymath. So it's like, yeah, I know a little bit about cameras. Whoopee. But I can't play a solo from ear. I can't. He was a genius, but also he was really good at guitar because he loved playing guitar. He wasn't trying to be like a big shot. He wasn't like, okay, I'm going to play guitar for 12 hours a day and this will allow me to be a big shot someday. No, he loved playing guitar. That's it. It was an addiction. It wasn't like, okay, I need to practice. No, are you kidding me? He literally went to bed with the guitar still in his lap and woke up with the guitar in his bed, and then he played it. He played it in his sleep. That's how you become Jimi Hendrix. You actually kind of have to love the thing you're doing. It has to be an addiction. It's a healthy addiction. That's hard, man. How the hell do you do that? But actually, musical instruments, once you get even slightly, once you break the mold or get over the hump of it being like practice, like, this is practice. This is shit I don't want to do. Once you actually get pleasure from it a little, it compounds and you become a musician who actually gets pleasure out of just playing around on keyboards. You don't care about people calling you a musician. It's just what you are. You don't give a crap about the street cred. It's just what you do for pleasure and for more than pleasure, for purpose in life. It feeds your soul. Like playing music, just playing a couple chords, even like a D minor chord, a E minor, or to C major 7 or whatever chords, easy chords, it immediately makes you go like, oh, this is like what life is all about. It's about actually like expressing emotions. Pretty much what it's about is teaching other people what's going on in your brain, is translating your experience to somebody else, or maybe to just yourself. Maybe you didn't know even that you could do that. That's the thing about outliers. They don't even know that they could do that. You thought I was going to say something different. You thought I was going to like go into more details. No, I just repeated the exact. They don't even know that they could do that. It's true. There's so many gifted people that know that they're gifted, but they don't want to use it because it's fucking painful. Because then you gotta go through this self-hate of like, maybe I'm not as gifted as I thought I am. When you learn a new thing, okay, to be fair, if you're an outlier, you're gonna excel at that thing a lot quicker than other people, but it doesn't really matter because the outlier already knows that they're an outlier. They already know that they're talented, so they don't really care if they're... It's like they get graded on a curve. It gets rounded down. It's just like, it's relative. It's like, okay, I am above average at anything I pursue. Maybe not sports, not anything, but at most things, certainly anything in the creative, anything creative, I'm gonna be above average effortlessly. I could just come up with like a chord progression and sing over it, and it'll evoke a certain emotion that's original. That's what a genius can do. That's same thing, you know? A genius is somebody that could just be like, yeah, give me that. Okay, here you go. And then they give it back to you, and it's like this original piece of art. Yeah, I'm not saying I could do that all the time, but like, yeah, pretty much that's kind of what it is. That's the gift that I have. Whoopee. So I'm flustered now because I don't like bragging. I mean, I don't really, it's not fun to be, it's but it's true. So yeah, I mean, I was talking about playing the chords. I don't know. I was going to say something about that, but I forgot where I was going. Okay, so yeah, once you get good at it though, life, yeah, and how the importance of music, art and music kind of, those are same sort of things. Music is probably the highest form of art because it's the deepest cutting form of art. What do I mean by that? Well, okay, you could see visual things that are deep cutting, for sure. But music on top of that is what sells it. The music adds a bias, adds color to the visual thing that you're looking at. It colors experiences and accentuates them and makes them way more powerful and rich. I mean, would you want to watch a slideshow at a kid's funeral without good music playing? No. You don't want to sit in silence during an emotional slideshow. That's what music was invented for. So music is really the most subtle deep cutting art form as a language. Also, the universal, which is pretty cool because that means if you're good at it, people will just show up to fuck you from anywhere across the globe. Across the globe, if you're looking at a globe, if you cross it, if you cross it, not circumnavigate, no, cross it through the core. If you heuristically, not circumnavigate, if you cut through the core, you'll see people that want to have sex with you all over the place in any country that likes Western music with equal temperament. Anyway, it's because the intervals in there and the pitch is in, and just music, the language of music. I don't got to explain it. It's a universal language that is very rich. So if you're good at it, you'll be looked at as, people want to have sex with you. If you're bad at it, people go, ugh. It hurts more than if you just draw an ugly thing on a piece of paper. Being bad at music is more offensive than being a bad drawer because it's more subtle of a language. You can't avoid it as easily. When somebody's playing it just gets into your soul. It cuts through butter. It cuts through the blood-brain barrier much better than imagery. It's just less, it's a better language. It's a more sophisticated, efficient language, not just for communication, also for storage of knowledge, storage of emotional knowledge, storage of episodic memories that are emotionally tinted. That's what music is for. I mean, it's not for that. That's what it certainly helps increase the ability to do. When you listen to a song that came out 20 years ago, you're not just bringing back memories of the song, you're bringing back memories of that time in your life, other things unrelated to the song. It's just because your brain encoded all that information, that episodic information, into the same bundle of sticks, the same program, let's say, as the song, because the song acts as a framework to encode not just the song, episodic memories. I can't explain how. How the hell do you explain that? So the song encodes other memories along with it. How does that work? I don't know. That's for linguists and that's for neurologists and neuroscientists to study. I just know that it happens because, it's true. Your brain, that's what nostalgia is. Something from the past will trigger nostalgia. What does that mean? Well, it's not that you're thinking about just that thing, the reference itself that triggered it. No, you're thinking about many other feelings that are now coming right back to you that were encoded along with that other abstract thing. Whatever that thing might be, it got encoded along with it. So it comes back along with it. It can't pick and choose. Your brain just filed it under the same category. Good song from the 90s. So it doesn't know which is the song and which is something else. It doesn't matter to your brain. Your brain just labels it the same way because it has to label it something, and it's fuzzy. It has to be simple because your brain has limited resources, like a database. If you put a key or an index to a value, a key has a limited amount of characters that it could contain, because that's the whole point of a key, is that it points to a value that is as long as it needs to be. But the key is the way to find where that value is. So your brain does the same thing. This is called abstraction. It's called heuristics. It's where it's like, okay, instead of thinking about all this detail, let's just think about just the smaller version of it, the microcosm, the little. It's a little micro version of it. It's an abbreviated version, but it's essentially the same. It's enough to know about the whole, it's enough to hint at the entire idea. But of course, the word itself doesn't contain the information. Words are just abstractions to get to ideas. Those ideas require probably something going on that's an image. If words just go to other words, that's a left brain way of processing. That's cognition on the left part of the brain, where it's like, okay, this word links to this word. But then after a certain point, you might need something more abstract. You might be, okay, this word doesn't quite link to any word, so let's go to the right side of the brain to fine-tune what words we could pull out of thin air. And that's where abstraction actually is. That's where it takes place for the first time before it gets crystallized. That's where it gets all murky. That's where it's like more liquid and lava on the right. And that's where images are created in your brain. That's where your brain literally models the universe. And then it's like, okay, I thought of a cool 3D model. Now let's turn that into a word. And then you think of the word, and then you can file it on the left side of your brain. So next time you don't have to picture all that crap. And your brain might remember the word, but it might forget the word too, because it doesn't care about the word. It cares about the image. That's what you should be doing. I mean, the words aren't important. Those are just abstractions to get to a 3D picture, 4D if you count time. Maybe even higher dimensions, because our brains and our language, the language of mathematics actually allows for us to communicate and not visualize, but communicate about higher dimensions that are not possible to picture. But, that's one of the cool things about math. But it still links to something sort of spatial. We don't have to say visual, because what visual really means is spatial. It means X, Y, Z coordinates. Shit in the stuff's happening in those coordinates somewhere, and they form shapes. And then we call those shapes certain things, specific shapes. Then we make up words for those shapes. And so on and so forth until you have equations that have nothing to do with the actual shapes, but they do. It's just that it's so far away that it's hard to visualize. But math is just another abstraction for other abstractions. Nothing's really real. Everything's abstract. Even real things that we could see. What does it mean for something to exist? Well, if you could think of something, if you have an idea, okay, that exists. You just created something. If you think you see a color, does that color exist? Yes, in your mind, it exists. So I'm being very lenient in this definition of existence. Existence just means somebody observes something, whatever that thing we're talking about is, that is questionable. Does this exist? Well, if you are thinking about it, it exists as a concept in your mind. That's the first step. Okay, so concepts. For a concept to exist, it simply has to be thought about. Does it exist on paper? No. The words exist on that substrate, but the concept, how does a piece of paper understand a concept? No, a concept can only exist in your head. Okay, so that's subjective things, colors, concepts. What about material things? That's what I want to know. How do we define whether a thing exists or not? If you could see it, yeah, but does it still? What about things that don't exist even when you can't see them? Object permanence. So here's where things get a little bananas. This is why I'm an outlier. Proof right here. So outliers, they're able to say things that no one would ever think themselves. Which doesn't make sense because I'm the one thinking it and I thought of it. So how does that make sense? Okay, I mean, you couldn't have thought of this. There's many things that I would never have come up with in a million years. That's why I'm not God. So even though I'm an outlier, I still fully recognize that I don't know that much. I'm not a god. There's things that are so obvious to other people that I will never figure out. So it's not like you feel infallible. You need other people to support you, to give you information, to like, oh, thank you for the hint. So anyway, here's something that I didn't need help figuring out from anyone else, except for Claude. I did need help from AI. Okay, okay, so does a painting exist when two people are not looking at, like, let's say two people looking at the same painting, right? They both see it slightly from different angles. But is there an objective version of that painting that is existent independently of those observers? Like, most people would go, yeah, of course. Just because they stop looking at the painting doesn't mean it stops existing. It's still there. They just stopped looking at it. You have to be really young. You literally have to be like a toddler to think that the painting goes out of existence when it's not being observed. Well, quantum physics says otherwise. I know this is talking about particles usually. The double slit experiment was about particles and waves, right? In picking which slot they went through based on observation. And then the Schrodinger's cat, that's a macro object. It's a thought experiment. But okay, I'm saying that this is actually true. Not that it disappears. Okay, so what does it mean for something to exist? What does it mean for something to be true? We're kind of talking about the same thing. What is a truth value dependent on? It's only dependent on whether an observer observes it or not. It's pretty simple. Truth is in the eye of the beholder. Look it up from the movie Lion King. The main bad guy, Scar, was actually kind of correct. That truth is in the eye of the beholder. He was lying at the time. I mean, he lied about killing Mufasa. He was a lie. He was a bad guy. But it's true, philosophically speaking and technically speaking. When we say philosophically, we really just mean we don't know. When someone says, okay, this is a philosophical question, that means they don't know the answer. So we actually do know the answer to the question of if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? Yeah, that's a great college level entry to philosophy, question of like, it's a thought experiment of like, it's good for students in their teens to ponder. And here's the answer. No. Okay, moving on. So what else is in the news? So Trump is still alive. Elon is the vice president. And then there's another guy. What's his point? Why is there J.D. Vance when it could just be Elon? Okay, anyway, I'm actually just kidding. I'm actually going to answer more. I'm going to elaborate. Because some people want, okay, so does a tree make noise if it falls and nobody's there to hear it? No. No, because hearing a sound requires somebody with ears, whether it's an animal. The concept of a sound, does it make a sound? Yes. But if there's no one there to hear it, did it really make a sound? Okay, maybe this wasn't that easy to definitively answer because just because nobody was there to hear it, it still did have all the characteristics of a sound wave. It still produced a sound wave. Okay. But, so yeah, okay, fine, it did make a sound. Maybe I'm changing my mind. Okay, it made a sound. But if no one was there to detect it, it's meaningless in the sense that, yeah, it's a sound wave, but we wouldn't call it that if there's no one there to call it that, to label that concept, to associate that happening phenomenon with the concept of a sound, then no, it didn't make a sound. Just because we define this phenomenon as making as a sound doesn't mean the universe agrees with our bias. So what am I saying here is that existence, truth, and meaning are all dependent on the observer or network of observers consensing on that decision, on that truth value. It takes consensus between observers if we're talking about something more objective. So back to the painting analogy. It's not an analogy. Okay, so the painting example is, I love it because it's talking about a piece of art, but it's also talking about objective reality. Is there an objective way to perceive a painting? Well, yeah, we agree that the answer to that is no, right? Most people who are educated, okay, all people who are educated would agree that it's impossible to have an objective appreciation of a painting. There's millions of ways to interpret a painting. So it's an intrinsically subjective concept. So does the painting exist regardless of this fact? Yes, it still doesn't matter how subjective the idea is. Yes, it does. The subjectiveness does matter because the more subjective, the less people are going to agree. So there's many ways to interpret a painting, right? But we all agree that the painting still exists when it's not being looked at, right? Well, no. Because to even know that a painting exists, you have to call it a painting, or else it's just a blob of atoms, right? So no, it actually does not exist unless there's somebody around to label it as a painting, to associate it with other paintings, to put it in that category. Otherwise, effectively, does it exist? If nobody thinks of it as a painting, does the painting exist? Well, it's illogical to say something exists if it's not a painting to begin with, right? Does the painting is well, that's not logical because it's not a painting anymore. If nobody thinks it of a painting, if everybody just disappeared and nobody in the universe had a concept of what a painting was, yet the painting is still there, would the painting still exist? Well, since nobody knows what a painting is anymore, since that's a lost concept, how can it exist? Doesn't make sense. Something cannot exist without a substrate giving it reference, referring to it, giving it life, teaching it to live, to exist as a learner. There's a learner-teacher relationship between all objects in the universe, and that's what gives them permanence. Otherwise, they actually do kind of become meaningless, aka they don't exist effectively. They might as well not exist. So children who are learning object permanence, their instincts are actually correct. If you can't associate something with something else, if it doesn't exist in your brain, who's to say it's real? Because all things that are real, the only reason we call them real is because our brains tell us they're real. And we all voted on it. So once people die, all that shit will disappear. Effectively, it will become meaningless. Noise. It'll just look like a random pattern, a random piece of nothingness. You could call it a pattern still. Anything that exists is a pattern. Anything that you could describe is a pattern by definition. It has attributes that makes it a pattern. So I don't think I fully explained. It is the idea of a painting that makes a painting exist. If there's nobody to keep track of whether something is a painting, you can't say that the painting exists because it's an idea. Ideas are not real. Does the matter that makes up the painting still exist? Well, it's not a painting anymore. So it's kind of like it's an artifact. So does something still exist? Yes. The universe still is tracking that this object still exists, this artifact, which we can no longer call a painting, but it still exists. Whatever it is, it still exists. But it's not a painting. So we give things meaning by observation, and that's the same with truth. What's the difference between meaning and truth? One is just more precise than the other. One is just agreed upon by more people. Pretty much, that's the only difference. Meaning and truth are the same thing. So the observer or learner doing the observation. Reality comes into existence because of observation. Quantum physics proves that. Even like anytime anything is stars, it's because they're actively engaging in this teacher-learner feedback loop, and they have their own native languages. And emergent properties happen because translations leave gaps for new things to emerge in between those gaps. Space itself is just a gap left by imperfect translation processes of very old cosmic languages that we call the laws of physics. but it's just a language like any other. So anyway, yes, if we aren't here to label something as meaningful, that thing might as well not exist. Right? Ideas, physical things, physical things are ideas. Right? Okay, this is where it gets a little... I think I already explained it. Like a camera, you would think, no, that's a very discrete, real object. Yeah, but it's still an idea. It's still a camera, right? I mean, there's nothing magical about it that makes it a camera. It's that we call it a camera. So existence comes down to labeling something as something that we know about, as an idea that can be that can persist. Existence is just ideas that persist in the minds of some observer through a teacher-learner coil. They kind of coil together. That's why the yin-yang, that's what that kind of represents. The opposites teaching each other, contrasting things, and it spins like a coil. And okay, so let's finish up on curvature. So we don't even know what gravity is. That's another communication framework. I used to not say this. I used to kind of be too paranoid to say this because it's kind of like you kind of have to be very... who the hell knows this, right? I mean, you kind of have to either be working for Area 51 in a black project like Bob Lazar or an alien to know this. So I was kind of paranoid to talk about this. I still kind of am. Because it's true. I don't know. Maybe it's not true what I'm particularly thinking. But it's true, probably enough to be like, okay, that explains how UFOs got here. Like, that explains a lot. So anyway, but they don't even know what gravity is. They call it the curvature of spacetime. Okay. But we don't even know what spacetime is. We think spacetime is an emergent property, which means it's not real. We don't actually live in a 3D universe. It's a hologram. So good luck figuring out what gravity is. But it's also not accurate to say it's curvature. I'm sorry, but where in the world can we point to a place where curvature is even a thing? Curvature is also an illusion. It's an emergent property of when we put things together in a way that tricks our minds into thinking that it's smooth. That it smoothly like bends around an angle. Yeah, but that's not real. Pi goes on forever because it's just like, oh, it's an illusion. It's like, okay, well, you can't ever have a real, full, perfect circle. So it just depends on how close you want to get. Just how many digits do you want to get? Because if you zoom in, it won't look like a circle anymore. There's nothing in reality that's truly curved. Is this not common knowledge? I guess you kind of have to be a savant. Like that guy that got punched in the head several times, like until he became a savant. He realized this. He was like, oh, wait, there's no such thing as curves. Everything is just straight. Everything's a straight line. That's why geometry works on quantum physics. We don't know the exact geometry. We just know that there's symmetries. There's symmetries to physics. But where the hell is there curvature? I mean, okay, you could say planets. You could say the Earth going around the sun, the ellipse of orbital paths, orbital ellipses. Those are pretty curved, right? Not if you zoom in enough, no. The fields of electromagnetism and magnetism around any object, it looks like a torus, like it goes out, it starts in the middle, goes down, and then back up. Around those things, is that a curvature? No, it's a straight line that is going through space-time, which is curved because of gravity. But it doesn't want to do that. It would just go straight if it was allowed to. But no, there's a field that's causing it to go in a curve. It's an illusion. It's refraction. It's bending from our point of view in a way that makes a rainbow, a curvature. But is that real? Or is it just, okay, it's a bunch of line segments that are so small that they're slowly making a curve? Yes, that would be my opinion. It's geodesics, meaning it's polygons that are morphing, that are being transformed to create these line segments that connect to each other very close and close, tiny, teeny, tiny, tiny. We can't see them because they're at the Planck scale, but there's no such thing as curves. There's a limited degree of freedom at the Planck level, maybe. We don't know. At the Planck scale. It could be not true. What I'm saying, this is just kind of what I think. Because vacuum fluctuations, they don't depict them as lines. Vacuum fluctuations are depicted as blobs, which implies that there might be curvature even at the Planck scale. We don't know. But what we do know is that as you become more complex, you gain more degrees of freedom. Once you hit the classical level of physics, you get more degrees of freedom. Kind of, in a way. I don't know. Maybe quantum particles actually have more degrees of freedom than this. Okay. So, where the hell am I going with this? So that's why we have a lot that we don't know. Like they say, we think that infinite curvature is what is at the center of black holes. Singularities, infinite curvature. But curvature is not real. So it has... I get it. I sound like a flat earther. I'm saying it's real. You could see that the Earth is clearly a ball. It's an oblate spheroid. I'm not a flat earther. I'm saying that that's a classical shape that if we could zoom in at the quantum level, it wouldn't look curved. The molecules would form a curve, but there's line segments that could be discretely measured. Because we live in a simulation. Not really. I'm not saying like some type of matrix type thing. Okay, I actually am. But I'm using it more in like the mathematical sense. Matrix. I mean, a matrix is just like a place where things come from. It's like a matricy. It's a substrate. So vacuum fluctuations are the lowest thing we could measure. We can't even measure them. We just know that they're there. They're random. But those somehow turn into particles, which turn into atoms, which turn into molecules, which turn into people. But curvature is not real. That's why pi goes on forever, because okay, well, it's You're never going to get to the end of a circle. You're never going to get to full smoothness. So that's why it's one of those numbers that go on forever. It's because you could always zoom in. It's a concept. The concept of a curve, yeah, that'll never go away. That's infinite. But why is pi 3.14? Why those digits? Shouldn't it be like an exact number? I'm not a geomagist. It also has to do with base 10 because we're in base 10. But the number 3 is special. Tesla, or Nikola Tesla, however you say his stupid name, Nikolai Tesla, he was right to be obsessed with the number 3. Because 3 is the number of sides and points of a triangle, which is the most basic polygon in the world. So that's probably what the universe is made out of. And you could get pi by just making little triangles, little slices in a pie and adding them up and just measuring the circumference. You'll get a approximation of pi with line segments. That's what they did back in the Archimedes days. They used triangles to get pi. Probably because the universe itself is made out of triangles, which have 3. So the number 3 is important because it's connected to triangles. Whatever. It goes deep, and there's a rabbit hole to this of the whole vortex math, which is bullshit. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about reinventing it, something actually true, not just vortex math. Okay, then. Have a good penis. I don't know. What the hell? Sometimes I get stuck in a sentence that I don't know how to finish, so I just say the word anyway. Have a good penis. So what I wanted to say was peace. I like to say peace, like have a peaceful rest. Have a peaceful evening. But I said have a good penis.